The cargo bay smelled like metal and recycled air. David Reeves sat on a supply crate, watching the docking procedures through the open bay doors. Station Helix 7 stretched out before him, all gleaming corridors and alien architecture. He didn't move much, just observed. That was his job. Around him, the crew of the Copper Dawn rushed about their duties, loading containers, checking manifests, preparing for the trade negotiations that would begin in a few hours. David stayed out of their way. He was good at being invisible when he wanted to be. A four-armed Bendari walked past, her blue skin catching the station's artificial light. She nodded at David. He nodded back. The crew had gotten used to him over the past 6 months. At first, they whispered about the human security guard who barely spoke. Now they just left him alone. David preferred it that way. His eyes tracked everything. The maintenance workers were placing a power coupling on Dock 7. The group of KRYLL diplomats approaching from the main concourse. The way one of them kept glancing at his datapad instead of looking where he walked. Small details, the kind most people missed. Captain Gorith appeared in the bay doorway, his massive frame blocking most of the light. The Benari captain was built like a mountain, with rough gray skin and eyes that had seen too many bad deals go worse. David, the KRYLL delegation arrives in 20 minutes, Gorith said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. I want you watching during the ceremony. Already planning on it, David replied. Gorith studied him for a moment. You make the others nervous, you know, the way you stare at everything. Better nervous than dead. The captain laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling down a hill. This is why I hired you, human. You see threats everywhere. That's because they are everywhere. After Gorith left, David moved to a better vantage point. He climbed up to the catwalk that ran along the bay's upper level. From here, he could see the entire docking area. The welcome ceremony would happen right below him. Lena found him there an hour later. She was the ship's navigator, the only other human on board. She carried 2 cups of something that smelled like burnt nuts. Station coffee, she said, handing him one. It's terrible. David took a sip. She was right. Thanks. You're doing the brooding watchman thing again. It's literally my job. Lena leaned against the railing beside him. They watched the crew set up a small platform for the greeting ceremony. Colorful banners representing the KRYLL collective hung from posts. It all looked very official and friendly. You think something's wrong, Lena said. It wasn't a question. David pointed at the KRYLL delegation gathering near the platform. Third one from the left. Dark green scales, shorter than the others. What about him? He scanned our cargo manifest 3 times in the last hour. Each time, he thinks nobody's watching. Lena squinted. How can you even tell from up here? The way he holds his datapad. The angle. The time he spends looking at it versus looking at his surroundings. David took another sip of the awful coffee. He's not reading messages. He's reviewing data. Maybe he's just thorough. Maybe. But David's instincts said otherwise. He had learned to trust those instincts a long time ago, back when missing details meant people died. Old habits from his military days. The kind that kept you breathing. The ceremony began exactly on time. Captain Gorith stood on the platform, his 4 arms spread in the traditional Bendari greeting. The lead KRYLL diplomat, an older one with silver-tipped scales, responded with their species' gesture of respect. David watched the exchange, but his attention kept drifting to the shorter KRYLL, the one who had been scanning their cargo data. His name was Civic. David had checked the delegation roster. Junior trade attaché. Nothing special about his record. Just another minor official in a delegation of minor officials. Except minor officials didn't usually spend so much time analyzing cargo manifests for medical supplies. The Copper Dawn was hauling antibiotics and antiviral compounds to a colony world called Thornhill. Standard humanitarian run, the kind that paid decent but not great. Nothing worth stealing. Nothing worth the risk of interfering with a registered mercy shipment. So why was Civic so interested? The ceremony dragged on. Speeches about cooperation and mutual benefit. Promises of fair trade and lasting partnerships. David had heard it all before. Pretty words that meant nothing if someone decided profit mattered more than principles. As the crowd began to disperse, David saw Civic slip away from the main group. The other KRYLL diplomats headed toward the station's commercial district, where Captain Gorath would take them for refreshments and informal discussions. But Civic walked in the opposite direction, toward the restricted docking bays. David set down his coffee cup and moved along the catwalk, keeping pace with Civic from above. The KRYLL didn't look up. Nobody ever looked up. It was one of the first things David had learned as a sniper. People thought in two dimensions. Threats came from ahead, behind, or beside, rarely from above. Civic entered a passage that led to the older section of the station, the areas where legitimate businesses didn't operate. David knew those corridors well. He had spent his first week on Helix, 7 mapping every route, every hiding spot, every emergency exit. He climbed down a service ladder and followed on foot, staying far enough back to remain unnoticed. Civic moved with purpose now, no longer pretending to be a casual diplomat. He was heading somewhere specific. The corridor ended at a small docking bay that was supposedly under maintenance. The doors were closed but not locked. Civic entered without hesitation. David approached carefully. Through a grimy window, he could see inside the bay. Civic stood talking to 3 figures. Their species was hard to identify in the dim light, but their body language was clear enough. This wasn't a friendly conversation. One of them handed Civic a small device. The KRYLL examined it, then nodded. Money changed hands. Digital credits transferred from one account to another. David memorized every face, every detail. Then he backed away slowly, returning to the copper dawn before anyone noticed his absence. Back in his quarters, David sat on his bunk and thought about what he had seen. A KRYLL diplomat meeting with suspicious characters in a restricted area, exchanging devices and money, acting nothing like a legitimate trade official. Something was very wrong with this situation. The question was what to do about it. He had no proof, just observations. Station security wouldn't act on the word of a human security guard, especially not against official diplomats. David pulled out his personal datapad and began reviewing everything he knew about the KRYLL delegation. Their stated purpose, their backgrounds, their schedules. Tomorrow, Captain Gorath would sign the preliminary trade agreement. The day after, the Copper Dawn would depart for Thornhill with the medical supplies. David had a bad feeling about both of those things happening. He needed more information, more evidence, more time to figure out what Civic was really planning. Outside his window, Station Helix 7 continued its endless routine. Thousands of beings going about their business, unaware that something dark was moving in the shadows. But David was aware. His eyes had caught what others missed. Now, he just had to figure out what it meant before it was too late. 3 hours of security footage later, David's eyes burned, but his focus never wavered. He sat in his quarters, watching the recordings on a portable screen. The station's automated systems captured everything, but nobody actually looked at the data unless something went wrong. David looked. Frame by frame, he tracked Civic's movements over the past 2 days. The KRYLL had been busy. Too busy for a simple trade attaché. Besides meeting with the suspicious figures in the restricted bay, Civic had also spent time with 3 other members of the delegation. Not the senior diplomats. These were mid-level functionaries, the kind that blended into the background. The kind nobody paid attention to. David paid attention. He noted times, locations, patterns. Civic met the same 3 KRYLL in different places, always briefly, always away from the main group. They were coordinating something. A knock on his door interrupted his analysis. Lena stood outside, holding her datapad with a worried expression. "We need to talk," she said. David let her in. She sat on the only chair while he remained on his bunk, the security footage still playing on his screen. "I did what you asked," Lena said. "Checked the ship's systems for anomalies. And found 4 unauthorized access attempts in the past day. Someone tried to hack into our navigation controls, engine management, and communications array." David felt his jaw tighten. Did they succeed? No, but only because our security protocols are better than they expected. The attempts were sophisticated, though. Military-grade intrusion software. "Can you trace them?" Lena nodded. Signal originated from the KRYLL delegation's quarters on the station. That confirmed it. This wasn't just suspicious behavior. This was an active operation against the Copper Dawn. David turned his screen toward Lena, showing her the footage of Civic's secret meetings. I think they're planning to hijack the ship. That's insane. Why would they risk an interstellar incident over medical supplies? Not the supplies, the ship itself, or maybe both. David pulled up the cargo manifest. These antibiotics are worth about 2 million credits on the open market. But there's a black market for them too, especially in systems under quarantine restrictions. Thornhill Colony needs them though. People will die without these medications. I know. Lena was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. What do we do? Tell Captain Gorth? With what proof? Unauthorized access attempts could be explained away as technical errors. My surveillance footage shows meetings that could be legitimate delegation business. We need something concrete. So we wait for them to make their move? David shook his head. We gather more evidence. I need to know their full plan before we can stop it. Over the next 18 hours, David barely slept. He tracked every member of the KRYLL delegation, cross-referenced their movements with station records, and pieced together a picture that made his blood run cold. The mining contract they were supposedly negotiating was completely fake. David accessed public records and found that the KRYLL collective had no mining interests in this sector. The company they claimed to represent didn't exist. The whole thing was an elaborate cover story. But the real revelation came when David identified the three figures Civic had met in the restricted bay. Facial recognition software flagged them immediately. Known associates of the Crimson Reach, a pirate organization that operated in the Outer Spiral. Pirates didn't meet with diplomats unless something very profitable was being planned. David brought this information to Lena, who had been monitoring the ship's systems around the clock for more intrusion attempts. It's worse than we thought, David said. I found chatter on the black market networks. Someone's put out a contract for cargo interception. The target description matches our ship exactly. How much is the contract worth? 3 million credits. Lena's eyes widened. That's more than the cargo is worth. Which means they want the ship too. Probably to sell it, strip it for parts, or use it for their own operations. We have to tell Gorth now. This is beyond suspicious. This is a verified threat. David agreed. They found the captain in his ready room, reviewing the trade documents that Civic had prepared. Gorth listened to their evidence with growing concern, his forearms crossing over his broad chest. This is serious, he said when they finished. But it's also largely circumstantial. The KRYLL collective will claim we're making baseless accusations. Sir, they've already tried to hack our systems, Lena protested, which they'll deny. And technically, you can't prove it was them. The signal originated from that section of the station, but dozens of beings have quarters there. David knew Gorth was right. In the world of interstellar diplomacy, proof mattered. Accusations without concrete evidence could start conflicts. What if we confront Civic directly? David suggested. Make him think we know more than we do. See if he slips up. Gorth considered this. It's risky. If we're wrong, we damage our reputation and possibly create a diplomatic incident. And if we're right, but do nothing, they hijack the ship and kill the crew. The captain's expression hardened. Very well. I'll arrange a meeting with Civic. Neutral territory, with station security nearby. We'll present our concerns officially and see how he reacts. That meeting happened 3 hours later in one of the station's diplomatic conference rooms. Civic arrived with 2 other KRYLL delegates, both senior to him. They looked annoyed at being summoned. Gorth presented the evidence carefully. The unauthorized access attempts, the fake mining company, the black market contract. He left out David's surveillance footage, keeping that in reserve. Civic listened with an expression of wounded innocence. When Gorth finished, the KRYLL spread his hands in a gesture of confusion. Captain, I'm deeply offended by these accusations. The KRYLL collective has always maintained the highest standards of diplomatic conduct. Then explain the company that doesn't exist, David said from his position by the door. Civic's eyes flickered toward him just for a moment. Administrative error. Our records department sometimes uses outdated registrations. And the hacking attempts? I know nothing about any such attempts. Perhaps your systems experienced technical malfunctions. One of the senior KRYLL delegates stood. Captain Gorith, if you're unwilling to proceed with our trade negotiations in good faith, we will report this incident to the collective. Your baseless paranoia is insulting. The meeting deteriorated from there. Within 20 minutes, station security had been called, not to arrest Civic, but to mediate the dispute. The security chief, a methodical Centauran named Bedros, listened to both sides and made his ruling. Without concrete proof of wrongdoing, I cannot take action against official diplomats, Bedros said. Captain Gorith, I recommend you proceed with caution, but I cannot prevent the KRYLL from conducting their legitimate business. Gorith was forced to apologize. The KRYLL delegation left the meeting radiating righteous indignation. David and Lena walked back to the ship in silence. They had played their hand too early and accomplished nothing except alerting their enemies. We made things worse, Lena said quietly. David didn't disagree, but as they approached the Copper Dawn, he made a decision. The official channels had failed. The system was too slow, too concerned with diplomatic niceties. Fine, he would handle this the old way, the way he had been trained to handle threats that couldn't be reasoned with. Stay on the ship tonight, David told Lena. Lock down all systems. Don't let anyone aboard except crew you personally recognize. What are you going to do? Make sure they can't execute their plan. David, if you kill someone on this station, they'll execute you, even in self-defense. He met her eyes. Then I better make sure it's worth it. David's custom rifle case had been hidden in the deepest storage locker on the Copper Dawn since the day he came aboard. He retrieved it now, checking the weapon carefully. Every component was exactly as he had left it. Clean, oiled, perfectly maintained. The rifle wasn't fancy. No energy weapons, no smart targeting systems. Just precision engineering and mechanical reliability. David had built it himself from parts acquired across a dozen worlds. It fired tungsten core rounds at velocities that could punch through most combat armor. He had hoped never to use it again. Along with the rifle, he took his spotter scope, a rangefinder, and a small device that generated a localized electromagnetic field. Nothing that would show up on station security scans. Just tools of a trade he thought he had left behind. Lena found him in the armory, assembling the rifle with practiced efficiency. You're really doing this, she said. They're making their move tonight. I intercepted coded transmissions between Civic and someone off station. They've hired backup. What kind of backup? Ragoth mercenaries. 6 of them, already docked on the far side of the station. Lena went pale. The Ragoth were legendary warriors, feared throughout the galaxy for their combat prowess. Each one was worth 10 normal soldiers. 6 Ragoth against 1 human? That's suicide. David attached the scope to his rifle. Not if they never see me coming. He had already scouted his position. A maintenance tower overlooking the Copper Dawn's docking berth, 347 meters away. The tower was scheduled for repairs, meaning it would be empty. Perfect line of sight, minimal foot traffic, multiple exit routes. David knew the station's air recycling patterns, the maintenance schedules, the security patrol rotations. He had spent 6 months learning every detail of this place. Now that knowledge would save lives. He left the ship through a cargo airlock, avoiding the main corridors. The rifle case was disguised as a standard equipment container. Nobody looked twice at a crew member carrying tools. The maintenance tower was exactly as he remembered. Metal scaffolding and exposed conduits, with a small platform at the top that maintenance crews used for exterior repairs. David climbed quickly, setting up his position with military precision. From here, he could see everything. The Copper Dawn sat in her berth, looking peaceful in the artificial light. The main concourse bustled with activity. The restricted docking bays where Civic had met his pirate contacts. David settled in to wait. His breathing slowed. His heart rate dropped to 52 beats per minute. Old training kicking in, the kind that had been drilled into him through thousands of hours of practice. A sniper didn't rush. A sniper was patient. Through his scope, David watched the KRYLL delegation's quarters. Civic emerged first, checking his surroundings nervously. Then the 3 other conspirators joined him. They moved toward the docking berth, trying to look casual. They weren't casual. David could see the tension in their movements, the way they kept touching concealed weapons. Minutes later, the Ragoth appeared. 6 massive warriors in light combat armor, moving with the confidence of beings who had never lost a fight. They joined Civic's group near a cargo container, roughly 50 meters from the Copper Dawn's airlock. David checked his rangefinder. 347 meters. Wind was minimal, just the station's air recycling creating a slight cross-current. He calculated the deflection. 0.7 degrees. Through his scope, he watched Civic brief the Ragoth, pointing at the ship, gesturing at the airlock. The plan was obvious. Storm the vessel, kill anyone aboard, seal it from the inside, and leave before station security responded. Simple, brutal, effective, except they hadn't accounted for David. One of the Ragoth handed out weapons. Plasma rifles, illegal on most stations, but easy to acquire if you knew the right people. The kind of weapons that would cut through the Copper Dawn's hull plating like paper. David's finger moved to his trigger. Not yet. He needed them to commit fully, to make their intentions undeniable. Shooting too early would give them an excuse, a way to claim self-defense or misunderstanding. He needed them to attack first. Civic checked his datapad one final time, then gave the signal. The Ragoth began moving toward the ship's airlock. They spread out in a tactical formation, weapons ready. David's breathing steadied. In-out. Halfway on the exhale, the lead Ragoth reached the airlock access panel. His hand moved toward the controls. David squeezed the trigger. The rifle made almost no sound, just a whisper of compressed air and mechanical action. The round traveled 347 meters in 0.4 seconds. It struck the lead Ragoth center mass, right where his 3 primary hearts clustered. The alien's combat armor might as well have been paper. The tungsten core punched through, destroying vital organs in an instant. The Ragoth stood still for a moment, his brain not yet registering what had happened. Then he fell, completely motionless, dead before he hit the ground. Station alarms began blaring immediately. Automated systems had detected weapons discharge. The remaining 5 Ragoth scattered, their warrior instincts taking over. But they had no idea where the shot came from. David was already tracking the second target, a Ragoth trying to take cover behind a cargo loader. The alien thought he was safe. He wasn't. David's second shot took him through the gap between the loader's support struts. Another perfect hit. Another body falling into complete stillness. Now the Ragoth were panicking. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, who had never faced an enemy they couldn't see or hear. The human weapon made no muzzle flash they could detect, no sound their audio sensors could locate. The third Ragoth made the mistake of running in a straight line. Basic tactical error. David's round caught him mid-stride. He went down hard. 3 down, 3 to go. The remaining Ragoth finally identified the general direction of fire. They began shooting back, plasma bolts screaming toward the maintenance tower. But they were shooting blind, hoping to suppress whatever was killing them. David had already moved to a different position on the platform. Their shots hit empty air. The 4th Ragoth tried to charge the tower, weapon blazing. Brave, but stupid. David led him by 2 meters, accounting for his speed and trajectory. Squeeze. Follow through. For down. Station security was converging now, armed teams rushing toward the docking area. But they were moving to arrest the KRYLL, assuming this was some kind of pirate operation. The last 2 Ragoth realized they were losing. One grabbed Civic, using the KRYLL diplomat as a living shield. The other provided covering fire as they retreated toward an emergency shuttle bay. David tracked them through his scope. The Ragoth holding Civic was smart, keeping the diplomat's body between himself and the direction of fire. They backed toward the shuttle, step by careful step. But the Ragoth made one mistake. He turned his head to check the shuttle's location. For just a second, a gap opened, 3 centimeters between Civic's arm and the Ragoth's skull. David calculated the deflection from the air currents, the angle, the movement. An impossible shot by any standard. He took it anyway. The round threaded through the gap. The Ragatha's head snapped back. He released Civic and fell. 5 down. The last Ragoth standing saw his partner fall and dropped his weapon. His hands went up in surrender. The galaxy's most feared warriors, and this one was giving up to an enemy he still couldn't see. David kept his scope trained on him, but didn't fire. The warrior had surrendered. The threat was over. 6 bodies lay on the station's deck. 5 Ragoth warriors and 1 still-breathing diplomat named Civic, who was screaming and hyperventilating. David calmly disassembled his rifle. Station security would be here soon. They would arrest him, question him, possibly execute him. But the Copper Dawn was safe. The crew was alive. The medical supplies would reach Thornhill Colony. His eyes hadn't missed. 6 threats eliminated in less than 2 minutes. Now came the hard part, explaining why. The holding cell was smaller than David's quarters on the Copper Dawn, but cleaner. He sat on the metal bench, hands clasped, staring at nothing in particular. 3 hours had passed since station security took him into custody. Nobody had hurt him. Nobody had even raised their voice. They just asked him to come with them, confiscated his rifle, and locked him in here. Professional, polite, completely by the book. Through the transparent wall, David could see security personnel moving back and forth. Some glanced at him with curiosity, others with something that might have been fear. The door opened. Security Chief Bedros entered, carrying a datapad. The Centaur's face was unreadable. His multiple eye stalks focused on David with unsettling intensity. "I've been reviewing the footage," Bedros said without preamble. "All 17 camera angles. I've watched it 23 times now." David said nothing. 6 Ragoth warriors. Elite mercenaries. Each one worth 10 normal soldiers in combat. Bedros set the datapad on the small table. "You killed 5 of them in 147 seconds. From 347 meters away." 143 seconds, David corrected quietly. "The first 4. Bedros's eye stalks twisted. "You're correcting me on how efficiently you killed 5 beings? You said you wanted accurate information." The security chief sat down across from David. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he pulled up a video file on his datapad and turned it toward David. "Walk me through it. How does one being do this?" David watched the footage. It showed the entire engagement from a high angle. The Ragoth advancing, his first shot, the scatter, the systematic elimination of each target. "Training," David said simply. "I've seen trained soldiers. I've seen elite warriors from a dozen species. Nobody shoots like this. Human soldiers do." Bedros leaned back. "I researched your species after the arrest. Your military history. The concept of a sniper is almost unknown in galactic warfare. Do you know why? Different evolutionary paths. Different tactical doctrines. Most species fight in groups. Overwhelming force. Direct confrontation. The idea of one individual eliminating threats from a distance is considered dishonorable by many warrior cultures." David met the Centaur's gaze. "Dishonorable or not, it works. That's what frightens me," Bedros admitted. "If one human can do this, what could 1,000 do? 10,000. We prefer not to find out." The security chief pulled up another file. "I've also been investigating your claims about Civic and the KRYLL delegation. Cross-referencing with our database, running background checks, analyzing the evidence you provided to Captain Gorth. And everything checks out. The fake mining company, the black market contract, the unauthorized access attempts on the Copper Dawn systems. Civic has confessed under questioning. He was planning to hijack the ship exactly as you suspected. So you believe me now. I believe the evidence. But that creates a legal problem." Bedros gestured at the walls around them. "You killed 5 beings on my station. Under normal circumstances, that's execution-level crime, regardless of justification." David had known this was coming. But you prevented an act of piracy that would have resulted in at least 12 deaths and the loss of critical medical supplies to a colony world. Legally, you acted in defense of a civilian vessel under imminent threat. So I'm free to go?" Bedros's expression was complicated. "The tribunal will make that decision, but I'll be recommending all charges be dropped. What you did was legal, if highly unusual." Relief washed through David, though he didn't show it. When's the tribunal? Tomorrow morning. Until then, you remain in custody. Protective custody, actually. The Ragoth warrior clans have been making inquiries. That got David's attention. What kind of inquiries? They want to meet you. Apparently, killing 5 of their elite warriors single-handedly has made you something of a legend. They're demanding to see the weapon you used, the techniques you employed. Tell them it was just a rifle and basic training. I did. They didn't believe me. They're convinced you must have used some kind of advanced technology or supernatural ability. David almost laughed. There was nothing supernatural about muscle memory and mathematics. Just years of practice, converting observation into action. The door opened again. Captain Gorith entered, having to duck to fit his massive frame through the doorway. Bedros stood and left, giving them privacy. Gorith sat where the security chief had been. His 4 arms were folded, his expression serious. You should have told me you were planning something like this, the captain said. Would you have approved? No, absolutely not. That's why I didn't tell you. Gorith's expression softened slightly. You saved my ship, my crew, probably saved thousands of lives on Thornhill Colony too. I am grateful, David. But you've also created a significant problem. I know. Do you? The entire Outer Spiral is talking about what happened here. A single human killing 5 Ragoth warriors before they could even locate him. Every government, every military organization, every criminal syndicate is now reassessing what they know about humanity. David hadn't considered that angle. He had been focused on the immediate threat, not the long-term implications. They're scared, Gorith continued. Not just of you personally, but of what you represent. If humans have soldiers with your capabilities, it changes the balance of power in this entire region of space. I'm just one person, one security guard. You're an example. And examples change how people think. The captain leaned forward. I've already received 7 offers for you. Private military contractors, planetary governments, even a few less savory organizations. Everyone wants to hire the human who killed 5 Ragoth. I'm not interested. I know, but they're not going to stop asking. Your quiet life on my ship? That's over. You're famous now, whether you like it or not. David closed his eyes. This was what he had been afraid of. Not the fighting, not the legal consequences. The attention. What do I do? He asked quietly. Gorith was silent for a moment. You keep being who you are. You did the right thing for the right reasons. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Even though I killed 5 beings, they were armed mercenaries attempting to murder your crew. You gave them every chance to stand down. The last one surrendered, and you spared him. That shows judgment, not bloodlust. The captain stood to leave. The tribunal tomorrow is a formality. Bedros is recommending your release, and I'll be testifying on your behalf. You'll walk out of here a free being. And then what? Then you have a choice. You can disappear, try to find another quiet job somewhere else. Or you can accept that the galaxy now knows what humans are capable of, and you can help shape what that knowledge means. After Gorith left, David lay down on the bench and stared at the ceiling. 5 dead Ragoth. Civic and his conspirators arrested. The Copper Dawn's safe. Mission accomplished. But at what cost? He thought about Earth, about the human soldiers still training for conflicts that might never come. About the galaxy learning that humanity had individuals capable of extreme precision violence. Would it make things better or worse? David didn't know. But as he drifted towards sleep, he realized one thing. His eyes had caught details others missed. His training had eliminated threats others couldn't see. And now the galaxy was watching to see what he would do next. The tribunal lasted 4 hours. David sat in a transparent defendant's box while lawyers and officials argued about jurisdiction, precedent, and the finer points of station law. He understood maybe half of what they said. Security Chief Bedros presented the evidence methodically. Video footage from 17 angles. Civic's confession. The black market contract. The fake mining company. Every piece fit together into an undeniable picture of conspiracy and attempted piracy. Captain Gorith testified about David's service record, his character, his warnings about the KRYLL delegation. The Binary captain's reputation carried weight. When he spoke, the tribunal members listened. The Ragoth clans sent a representative, a scarred warrior named Dethek, who demanded to see the weapon that had killed 5 of his kind. The tribunal allowed it. David's rifle was brought out in its case. Dethek examined it with confusion. This is primitive. Mechanical. No energy cell. No smart targeting. Correct, David said from his box. How does it kill? Through Ragoth combat armor. Physics. Mass times velocity equals penetration. The warrior looked at him with something between respect and disbelief. You aimed and fired without computer assistance? Yes. Impossible. The distance was too great. 347 meters. I've made shots at twice that range. The tribunal chamber went silent. Dethek stared at David for a long moment, then bowed his head slightly. A gesture of acknowledgement among Ragoth warriors. You have earned the right to claim those kills, Dethek said formally. The clans recognize your victory. After 6 hours of deliberation, the tribunal reached their verdict. All charges dropped. David had acted in legitimate defense of a civilian vessel under imminent attack. His use of lethal force was deemed appropriate given the threat level. He was free to go. Outside the tribunal chamber, reporters from a dozen news agencies waited. David ignored them all, pushing through the crowd toward where Lena stood waiting. You're officially not a criminal, she said with a tired smile. That's reassuring. They walked back to the Copper Dawn together. The ship had already received clearance to depart. Captain Gorath wanted to leave before more attention arrived. But attention had already arrived. Waiting at the ship's airlock were 3 figures David didn't recognize. 2 humans in military-style clothing and 1 official-looking alien in a formal diplomatic suit. The older human, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. David Reeves? I'm Colonel Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Forces. This is Lieutenant Marcus Kim and Ambassador Telvik of the Galactic Council. David's stomach sank. Earth military and galactic diplomats. Nothing good came from that combination. What can I do for you? He asked carefully. We'd like to discuss your future employment options, Colonel Chin said. Perhaps somewhere more private? Captain Gorath appeared at the airlock. Anything you say to my crew member, you can say in front of me. The ambassador, a thin being with crystalline skin, spoke in a musical voice. Captain, we mean no disrespect, but Mr. Reeves has become a person of significant interest to multiple governments. His actions here have raised important questions about human capabilities. David isn't military anymore, Gorath said firmly. He works for me. We understand. But circumstances have changed. The revelation that humans possess individuals with such remarkable combat skills has shifted certain political calculations. David cut through the diplomatic language. You want to recruit me? Several parties want to recruit you, Colonel Chin said. Earth Defense Forces, 3 different private military corporations, the Galactic Council Security Division, and about a dozen planetary governments. I'm not interested, not even in protecting human interests, because that's what's at stake here. The galaxy now knows that humanity can produce soldiers like you. That knowledge will change how other species interact with us. We need people who can help navigate those changes. Lieutenant Kim, who had been silent until now, spoke up. You're a weapon, Reeves, whether you like it or not. The question is who controls that weapon. Nobody controls me, David said quietly. The ambassador made a placating gesture. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Mr. Reeves, your actions saved thousands of lives. The medical supplies you protected will reach Thornhill Colony on schedule. You're a hero. I'm a security guard who did his job. You're more than that now. The entire outer spiral has heard what happened. Human snipers. Precision elimination of targets from distances most species consider impossible. You become a symbol. David felt anger rising. He didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to do his job, collect his pay, and live quietly. I appreciate the offers, he said carefully, but I already have employment. Captain Gorath pays well and doesn't ask me to be anything except what I am. Colonel Chin's expression hardened. Earth needs you, Reeves. Your country needs you. I did my time. 8 years in service. I'm done. You're never done. Not when you have skills that could save lives. I just saved lives. 12 crew members on this ship. Thousands of colonists on Thornhill. How many more do I need to save before I've earned the right to a quiet life? The question hung in the air. Finally, Ambassador Telvik spoke. You've earned that right, but the galaxy may not give it to you. Your existence changes equations. The knowledge that humanity produces individuals like you will affect negotiations, treaties, military planning across dozens of worlds. That's not my problem. It will be, because now everyone will want to test themselves against the human who killed 5 Ragoth. Some will want to hire you. Others will want to prove you're not as good as the stories say. Either way, you become a target. Lena, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. So what? David has a right to live his life. He doesn't owe anyone anything. Colonel Chen looked at her. You're Lena Hart, navigator, former civilian contractor for Earth Defense. That's right. Then you understand operational security. You know what happens when capabilities are revealed. The Ragoth incident has made humanity a factor in galactic military calculations. We need to manage that carefully. By recruiting everyone with David's skills. By making sure those skills serve humanity's interests, not whoever pays the most. David had heard enough. This conversation is over. I'm staying with Captain Goreth. If Earth or the Galactic Council has a problem with that, they can take it up with him. He walked past them into the ship. Lena followed. Captain Goreth remained at the airlock, his massive frame blocking the entrance. My crew member has made his choice, Goreth rumbled. Respect it or leave my ship. The 3 visitors exchanged glances. Finally, Colonel Chun handed Goreth a data chip. When he changes his mind, have him contact this address. He won't change his mind. Everyone does eventually. After they left, David sat in his quarters and tried to process what had just happened. In less than 2 days, his entire life had changed. He was famous, wanted, probably going to be hunted by people looking to prove themselves. All because his eyes hadn't missed and his training had been better than 5 Ragoth warriors. A message appeared on his personal datapad from his sister on Earth. She had heard about the incident. The whole planet had heard. I always knew you were special, she wrote. The galaxy is just catching up. Stay safe, big brother, and maybe come visit when things calm down. David smiled despite everything. His sister always knew how to cut through the noise. The Copper Dawn's engines powered up. In an hour, they would depart for Thornhill Colony. David would deliver the medical supplies, see the people he had saved, and then continue working as ship security. His quiet life was over, but maybe that was okay. Maybe being seen was better than hiding. Thornhill Colony appeared on the view screen 3 weeks later. The planet looked green and peaceful from orbit, but David knew the truth. Plague had swept through the settlements, killing hundreds before anyone understood what was happening. The medical supplies in the Copper Dawn's cargo hold would change that. Captain Goreth stood beside David in the observation deck. They're calling you a hero down there. The governor wants to hold a ceremony. I'd rather skip it. Not an option. These people need to see who saved them. It's important for morale. David sighed. He knew Goreth was right, but he still hated the attention. The ceremony was exactly as uncomfortable as he expected. Hundreds of colonists gathered in the main settlement square. Governor Renfeld, a tired-looking man with gray hair, gave a speech about sacrifice and service. Children held signs thanking the Copper Dawn crew. When David's name was called, the crowd erupted in applause. He walked to the platform, shook the governor's hand, accepted a decorative medal he would never wear. Thank you, Renfeld said, gripping David's hand firmly. My daughter was one of the people saved by these medications. She's 8 years old. Without you, she would have died. David didn't know what to say to that. I'm glad she's okay. After the ceremony, a small girl approached him. She had dark hair and curious eyes. Are you really the man who fought the bad aliens? She asked. David knelt down to her level. I stopped some people who wanted to steal medicine. That's all. My mom says you're a hero. I'm just someone who did his job. The girl thought about this seriously. Doing your job can be heroic, though, if your job is protecting people. David smiled. That's a good point. What's your name? Rebecca. I was really sick. The doctor said I might die. But then your ship came, and I got better. She hugged him suddenly, a fierce little kid hug that caught him off guard. David awkwardly patted her back. I'm happy you're better, Rebecca. That night, David stood in the cargo bay, watching the last of the medical supplies being unloaded. Everything had arrived intact. Mission accomplished. Lena found him there. You're brooding again. Just thinking about whether I made things better or worse. By being good at what I do. Lena leaned against the container. That little girl is alive because of you. Hundreds of people are alive. How is that worse? But now everyone knows about human capabilities, about what we can do. They were going to find out eventually. Better they learn from someone using those skills to protect people than from someone using them to hurt people. David considered that. Maybe she was right. The galaxy would have discovered human military capabilities sooner or later. At least this way, the first example was defensive rather than aggressive. Over the next 3 months, life aboard the Copper Dawn changed. Captain Gorath hired 2 more humans with military backgrounds. Not to replace David, but to learn from him. The Bendari captain was building a crew that could handle threats before they became emergencies. Other ships started requesting human security personnel. Within 6 months, dozens of Earth veterans found employment throughout the outer spiral. The demand was high, and the pay was better than most military contracts. David trained the new crew members, teaching them what to watch for, how to read situations, when to act, and when to wait. Some of them were naturals. Others struggled with the patience required. You make it look easy, one of the new hires said after a training session. That's because I've been doing it for 15 years. Give it time. Station Helix 7 became a regular stop on the Copper Dawn's route. Security Chief Bedros always greeted them personally, and the station crew had learned to respect the human security team. The Ragoth clans sent periodic challenges, warriors wanting to test themselves against David. He declined all of them. Fighting for sport wasn't his style. But one day, a young Ragoth warrior named Kelth approached him with a different request. Teach me, Kelth said, not to fight, to see, the way you see threats. David studied the warrior. Why? Because my people rely on strength and honor. But you defeated 5 of our best with patience and precision. I want to learn both methods. David thought about refusing, but then he remembered what Lena had said. Better to share knowledge than hoard it. Fine. But this isn't combat training. This is observation, pattern recognition, threat assessment. Understand. Kelth became David's first non-human student. The Ragoth struggled at first, his warrior instincts pushing him toward direct action. But gradually, he learned to watch, to wait, to see patterns others missed. Other species noticed. Soon David was training a mixed group of beings, teaching them the fundamentals of situational awareness and defensive tactics. Word spread. The human who taught others to protect themselves rather than just protecting them personally. A year after the incident at Helix 7, David received a message from Colonel Chen. Earth Defense Forces wanted to establish a training program based on his methods. They wanted him to consult. He agreed, but on his terms. He would help design the curriculum, but he wouldn't rejoin the military. He would remain with Captain Gorath and the Copper Dawn. The colonel accepted. Some knowledge was better than no knowledge. 5 years later, human security consultants worked on hundreds of ships throughout known space. The galaxy had adapted to humanity's presence, and humanity had adapted to the galaxy. David still worked aboard the Copper Dawn, still watched for threats, still trained new crew members. But now he also taught classes at various stations, sharing what he knew with beings from dozen species. His eyes still didn't miss details. But now he used that ability not just to eliminate threats, but to prevent them, to teach others how to stay safe. Lena, who had become the ship's first officer, sometimes asked him if he regretted what happened at Helix 7. No, he always answered. Those 5 Ragoth made their choice. I made mine. Everyone else is making theirs now. Do you think the galaxy is safer with humans in it? David thought about Rebecca, the little girl who had hugged him, about the students he trained, about the ships that sailed safely because someone had learned to watch for danger. I think the galaxy is what we make it, and we're trying to make it better. One evening, David stood in his usual spot in the observation deck. Captain Gorath joined him. Still watching? The Bendari asked. Always. After all these years, you never stop. Can't. It's who I am. Gorth nodded. The galaxy is lucky to have beings like you. People who see what others miss. Who act when action is needed. David didn't respond. He just kept watching the stars drift by, his trained eyes scanning for details, for patterns, for threats. His eyes didn't miss. They never would. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, beings moved about their lives a little safer because one human had refused to look away. Because David Reeves had decided that watching mattered, that protecting people mattered, that doing the right thing, even when it was hard, mattered most of all. The copper dawn sailed on into the endless night, carrying cargo and hope and the quiet certainty that someone was always watching, always ready, always paying attention to what everyone else missed. And the galaxy, slowly learning what humanity had always known, became a better place for it.